So, Marilyn, Okoro, Tonie, Campbell, and Paul DeBella. Welcome to Athletics Confession Show right here on the Global Sports Channel. And Marilyn, we'll start off with you. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Very excited to be on the Global Sports Show and amongst such esteemed company.
Whereabouts are you talking to us from today?
I am talking to you from Wigan, which is a little city in the northwest of England.
And they just happen to play rugby league pretty well there in Wigan as well, don't they?
Yeah, I'm actually a southerner, so I'm from London, and I had to learn about rugby league. You know, I'm a bit of a rugby union girl, but yeah, apparently rugby league is proper rugby.
Can you walk around town without people actually not mentioning rugby league up in those parts?
Not at all. Wigan Warriors just are everywhere, so I can't complain. They're all right to look at.
Well, there you go, and thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Tonie Campbell, you're over there in the United States. Fine man. Whereabouts in the US are you?
I'm coming live from beautiful and sunny San Diego. So, yeah, pleasure to be here as well. And hey, go Chiefs.
He got it in early. He got it in very early. There we go. One of my favourite cities in San Diego. Done a few triathlons there. It's a great place for the triathlete community, San Diego. And I don't think there's any better climate anywhere in the world, is there, Tonie?
Unfortunately, you're absolutely correct there. I stumbled on San Diego about 20 years ago, and I haven't been able to leave yet. I've wanted to move to somewhere different, but my wife is like, unless there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, we're not moving. So, so I'm stuck here, but a not bad place to be stuck, I guess.
Where were you before San Diego?
Los Angeles, the east part of Los Angeles. I had a house up there in Ontario, which is not far from Mount Sac, one of the meccas of track and field.
Absolutely.
Actually, I was competing. I trained there a little bit, trained athletes there when I first got into coaching. So, but my training was always done inside the city proper of Los Angeles. But yeah, so, mostly in Los Angeles. But hey, I'm a South London person too. My daughter lives in Croydon, and I've lived there a little bit. So yeah, I'm familiar. I don't have the Cockney accent. I'm married to a Scouser right now, but there's those are really kind of weird. So but yeah.
I'm 20 minutes away from Liverpool.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I can never hear it, So because they definitely have a different dialect there. So.
We got the international community going on here. The League of Nations is happening, I think. Yeah.
Sure do.
Okay, our final guest today is down under with me here in Australia. Paul DeBella, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you guys this morning.
Thanks for getting up bright and early. Whereabouts in the great land down under are you based?
I'm in Townsville in North Queensland, the heartland of rugby league.
Heartland of rugby league, indeed. So, Marilyn and Tonie, have you ever been to Queensland in Australia?
Sadly, I've gone through Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, Canberra, and never gone much further north than that. And you know what? And I'm an avid diver, and so I've always wanted to go north just to go dive the Great Barrier Reef and stuff like that. So, hey, I've made a new friend with Paul. Maybe I'll get an invite one day. Yeah, how about that?
Absolutely.
Always welcome, Tonie.
Absolutely.
There we go. Marilyn, have you been to Queensland?
I haven't. I've been to Melbourne and Tamsin Lewis, great friend of mine's out there. That was, if I was going to salvage a season, I was hopefully going to be over there. But no, I think that will be my retirement treat, to sort of travel over to Australia and actually explore.
Well,
so, hi guys. Hi.
Tamsin's going to be listening into the show, so you can give her a shout out to her for sure.
Oh, hi Tamsin.
Well, I'll tell you what, when this COVID mess goes away, you two can book yourself a ticket down under and come and visit, and Paul and I'll take you out. I'm actually sitting on my sailboat doing the show today, so I'll sail up to the Great Barrier Reef and we'll go diving off the Great Barrier Reef. How about that?
Oh, I'm there.
Okay, so I thought we'd kick off by just letting you guys tell the audience, first of all, about what got you into track and field. What was the inspiration, and what actual event did you focus on during your track and field career? Marilyn, how about we kick off with you?
Sure. So very natural progression. It all started with school for me. I actually was an avid lacrosse player. That was my first love. So I don't know, for those of you that don't know lacrosse, it's a game with a long stick with a net at the end and you run everywhere. So it was perfect. And I was center, and it's known as the boundaryless game. So I guess my PE teachers picked up on that sort of speed endurance and just that boundless energy and suggested I go to running club, which I wasn't too impressed with because it just meant running up and down lacrosse pitches, which I was doing anyway. But I'm glad that I did go. That's where I met probably the most influential person in my career to date, which is my very first coach. And he introduced me to my club, Shaftesbury Barnet Harriers. And, he became a father figure to me and really nurtured those early development years and helped me find my way. I did absolutely everything. I think my versatility in sports, because I played netball and tennis as well, just sort of lent itself to athletics. And I just really he told me I was going to run the 800 one day, and that was that.
You had no choice.
No, I thought I was going to be a 200-meter sprinter, but need to work on the start bit.
So I'm sure everybody's wondering, how did you get into lacrosse?
So I grew up in northwest London, an area of great sort of economic deprivation. We're just trying to survive. And I think a lot of my resilience comes from that. But at 10 years old, I was really blessed to go to a really lovely boarding school. My dad, who's been based in the States all my life, he thought that was, education is so important to the Nigerian culture. So he sent me to a great school about 40 minutes away from where I lived. And it was a world away from what I knew. It just was all this greenery everywhere. And that's how I got into lacrosse. I think a lot of the independent schools, they either play hockey or lacrosse for the winter, but our school was so tiny. My year, there was only 20 of us, 180 in the whole school. So the whole lacrosse team was the debate team, was the choir. So it was a really tight-knit community. And I just loved it. It was, a way for me to sort of get out that little bit of aggression. I'm not, I'm a very sweet person, but on the pitch and on the track, I could let it out.
I'll tell you what Tasha told me later on after the show about that.
Yeah, been paid, okay, search.
So 800 meters. Can you describe the 800 meters for us in 3 words?
Whole lot of pain.
Whole lot of pain. There we go. Yeah, good one. Well, that's
it's a fantastic race. It's it takes tenacity, it's speed, it's endurance, it's tactics, but it's literally 2 laps of sprinting. But you better pace yourself, as I've learned throughout my career. But when you get it right, it's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Okay, Tonie, on to you. What got you into track and field, and what's your event?
Well, my event was the 110-meter high hurdles, but I'll tell you what, I didn't fall into track, like most people did. I got there by accident. I grew up being a football player. Wasn't that great at football, but I was really good in baseball, planning on maybe one day trying to get into the Major League Baseball because I had a cousin that played for the LA Dodgers for years and ended up coaching for them. And then, so I had grown up playing those 2 sports, and I just wanted a break before I did that serious push to try to get that college scholarship and everything. And so my first year of high school, 10th grade year back in those days, all my buddies were running track. They played football in the fall and they ran track in the spring. And I was just like, well, I'm taking a break in baseball, but I don't know what sport to do. I'm not good in basketball. And, I already said I'm not going to do baseball. And so my friends were like, dude, come out for track. And I'm like, well, I'm not fast. I'm one of the slowest kids on our block, on our street. Why am I going to go out for track? They're like, there's a lot of different events. You just got to come out. And most importantly, that's where the girls are, man. The girls come out. So I was like, I'm like 110, 115, 20 pounds, 5'10", and I'm like, I want a girlfriend too. Okay, I'll go out, And so I went out for the track team, and not knowing what event there were, what event I was going to do. And so, I knew I wasn't that fast, so the sprints were out. I knew I wasn't that strong, so I'm not going to do the throws. I'm not good long distance. I can jump kinda, and so, everybody at the first day of practice parted off to their own events, And I'm standing there left with a group of hurdlers, and I'm like, and they're like, "Are you a hurdler?" I'm like, "Well, you know, I kind of got bullied when I was growing up, so I can jump over low hurdles, no problem." So what happened was I became a hurdler like that, but it got worse for me because they were like, "Well, if you're a hurdler, we need you to do both events, the high hurdles and the low hurdles." And I looked at the high hurdles at that time in high school at 39 inches, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be a hurdler because that you got to be crazy to go over those things. And the local, let's just say he was the team captain, but he was also the neighborhood team captain, if you know what I'm saying. Kind of an aggressive guy, and he got in my face, and this is the God honest truth. He got in my face, pushed me, called me, said, "Don't be a feline." Let's say that. Don't be a little feline. And it gave me a hard push, and I started falling backwards. And that hurdle was back behind me, and I turned around and I jumped over it, and I cleared it. 39-inch hurdle, high hurdle, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I can do it! I actually can do it!" And I fell in love with the high hurdles ever since. And and then I went on to becoming one of the best ever. I'm still waiting for that knock on the door of Hall of Fame USA Track and Field. Hint, hint, hint. You know, to go into the Hall of Fame for track and field. So, but that's my event and that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
What a great story! And I tell you what, I've got a little birdie in my ear asking, "Did you get the girl? Did you get the girl?"
Oh yeah, definitely. I
So,
got
That's
the girl, lost the girl.
or whatever.
So your buddy was right, yeah? Get into track and field and you get the girl, huh?
But see, Paul and Marilyn don't remember this era. They weren't even a twinkle in their parents' eyes. Back in those days, you wore the short shorts, you know. So so we showed quite a bit of leg back in the day. So that's really probably why the girls came to the track meet, to see the guys dang near running, you know, naked out there, I guess. So, but it was a good life. It was a good experience.
So I bet you have no trouble in describing the high hurdles in 3 words, huh? Describe your event in 3
actually,
words.
I can describe that. Crazy DNA donorships. That's what it is. That's 3 words for you. How about that?
Fantastic. Good stuff. Okay, Paul, what got you into track and field, and what was your event?
Well, primarily I started track and field when I was in primary school, very similar to Marilyn, and I found out quite early that I was actually quite fast. My phys ed teachers at school used to handicap me behind the other students because I would win every single race. So it just happened that one year that they couldn't put me back any further in the race because there was building in the road. So I had to join the local athletics club and test my skills against athletes that were older than me. So initially, before I was a sprinter, I was a horizontal jumper. I enjoyed doing the long jump and the triple jump. And it was only through accident that I actually started doing sprinting more because of injury. When I got injured one year, my coach mentioned to me that we should probably go and do some sprinting to try and get that technically correct, because to jump far, you obviously have to run fast. And it all started from there. I ended up going to the sprints and unfortunately had to leave the comfort of my home to pursue sprinting. I had to leave to southeast Queensland, where the metropolitan area was. And that's where I started my career at the Queensland Academy of Sport. And the rest is history. We trained twice a day, 6 days a week. We worked really hard as a whole squad, and was lucky enough to reach the pinnacle of sprinting and represent my country.
Brilliant. And how would you describe your event? Let's take the 100 for your event to describe in 3 words. How would you describe the 100, Paul?
0 to 100.
0 to 100.
There is no room for error in the sprints. If you make a mistake, the race is literally over. You just have to execute and just 0 to 100. Yeah,
brilliant. Good stuff. Well, thank you all for sharing the way that you got in sport. And it's great to hear that you all kind of stumbled in through the back door to many of your events that you're doing and have done. Now, one of the things that I've found in my research of the global track and field world is that there's a bit of a misconception misconception from sports fans out there about how difficult it actually is to be a professional sports person. So let's go back to that time where you started off in your careers, and I guess there was a lot of new experiences. Paul's just talked about having to move away from home to go training in another city and things like that. So can we wind the clock back and just talk about your early days and what were some of the difficulties as a professional sports person that you came up across? How about we start with you, Tonie, this time?
Well, the one thing I will say that there were some big learning curves to be made from high school to college and college to elite level, for sure. I mean, in high school, it was a PE teacher that probably was also the history teacher, and all the knowledge they knew about track and field was do one lap of warm up, touch your toes, and go play on your hurdles or whatever. And that's probably the hardest training I ever had in high school, was doing one lap jog before I went to work out. And then when you get to college, I mean, when I went to USC, I had 5 Olympians on the team. Wow. And those workouts were mini Olympic trials. And so I was casting fire early to know what it takes to be an Olympian, what it takes to train like an Olympian. And I got a education that probably a lot of athletes never would have, by being in the company of such great athletes. I mean, for instance, you go from a high school workout of one lap, maybe a couple 150s or 200, to the first day, and this is no kidding, the first day at USC's practice, we had 7 400s with the 400-meter jog in between. And again, I'm coming from a point of view, I've never run a 400 outside of a relay at practice at all. And now I got 7 of them, and I'm running against some of the world's best. It was crazy. And when I became an elite athlete, that's when you see the business side of the sport, in terms of you have a target on your back because now you're a professional athlete and you have targets that you're going for. There are individuals that might be ranked ahead of you or individuals that you're preparing to race against. You're constantly thinking about, what are they doing? How am I going to beat them? How am I going to perfect my skill? And also becoming one of the best in the world and holding on to my spot, which is one of the hardest things. Holding on to your spot is I think, more difficult and more taxing mentally than trying to get to the top. I mean, I've been world champion a few times and world ranked number 2 in the world. That's a whole nother story, but trying to hold on to those high rankings is very difficult. So it's definitely a chore. It's definitely a challenge.
So would you say, looking back now, when you were thrown in the deep end with such tough competition to train with, did that really help you significantly, though? Did you see your own personal development take off as a result of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was, as a freshman, coming into USC as a freshman, I got recruited with the 2 other guys that beat me in the high school state championships. And then to add injury to insult, they brought in the Finnish national champion who ended up becoming the bronze medalist in 1984, Artur Brigary. So I'm there as a high hurdler and I'm the 4th guy. So I don't even get to travel with the team, but yet I'm training with the number 1 world ranked 200-meter runner, the number 1 world ranked 400-meter runner, the number 1 world ranked 100-meter runner at that time, James Sanford, Billy Mullins, and Clancy Edwards. And then we have Donald Quarry, the great Jamaican sprinter, 5-time Olympian. He's training, and 4 or 5 other Olympians from other countries are training. So I see their professionalism. I also see the pressure that they put upon all the younger athletes to don't mess with them by having, bringing the workouts down. They wouldn't tolerate us running slow. They're like, if you're going to be on our team, you got to train with us and you got to push us. Right. And so that type of training really made a difference with me, and it really, really, solidified what hard work is and what it takes to be an Olympian. And I just had to figure out how to transfer that sprint mentality into the hurdles.
Brilliant stuff. Marilyn, how about you? When you started your career and went professional, what were some of and let's get into the emotional struggles as well. What were you dealing with in your head at the time that you found difficult, maybe stepping up to that level?
So I think for me, culturally, there was that big aspect in terms of my mom's expectation for me to be a lawyer or a doctor. So my initial thing was to prove to her that I could be a great student, I could get my degree, but hey, I'm also going to chase this dream of mine and become, you know, the best athlete that I can be. And for me, that meant getting to the Olympic Games. So essentially my first no came very close to home from my mother, who has a lot of influence over my life. So there's that kind of battle, but that sort of, you know, made me very driven to succeed. I think I had, you know, in the UK, it's very different to America. The stars are very few and far between. So you just keep doing your thing in your little silo and just keep the faith that one day, hey, you're going to make it onto the big stage, and that comes at nationals. And, you know, as you can see from my top here, I've spent some times in the States and I've been to the USAs. So that was a big awakener for me of not necessarily that I had it easy, because the 800 has always been a really tough event in the UK and always traditionally been really well contested. However, you know, our nationals is a whole different kettle of fish. So that was always the aim every year. That was always the big one. I think for me, being a Black female in a middle distance event, I had things like that to contend with, because, hey, I look like a sprinter. I'm very, you know, robust and muscular, coming from the sprint background. You know, as a junior, I did contest the 400. So I felt like I had so much to prove to others, which I think when you're young and, you know, stress isn't so much of a thing, that is a really positive driver. And for me, it was like the power of no. I always talk about, let's prove these people wrong. And, you know, it worked for me. And I had quite a blissful introduction to the elite world. You know, you're going to get that contract and you've got an agent and all the glitz and glamour that goes with it. But, you know, as the journey unfolds, you realize there's always a story to all that glory. And, you know, I was blessed with a great training group, my first professional training group. I did have some stars in there. You know, we had Donna Fraser, fourth at, you know, the Sydney Games. And in my event, Joe Mersch, who was an awesome 800 runner, Danny Crates, you know, Olympic Paralympian. So, you know, I had those people to look up to and aspire to. And essentially I went from training twice a week to 6 times a week. So, you know, there was going to be some big changes. And my journey from, you know, a sort of a good university level, collegiate level athlete to the Olympic Games was 2 years, and going from 203 to 158. So I took huge strides. So it was a bit of a whirlwind. And I think for me, the second half of that career was when the challenges came and the hurdles came, and, you know, lots of lessons that I've learned.
So very different to what Tonie was explaining. You were training and working in a silo kind of mentality. Did you enjoy that? Do you looking back now, do you think it's something that made you tougher and stronger and more dedicated?
No, I always feel like, you know, obviously we have our clubs and that's great, but I'm always encouraging young athletes that I mentor that you need to start taking ownership and accountability of your training and what you're doing, and speak up and communication. I feel like when we get our first coach, everything, you know, they're the experts, and it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really warrant you to sort of develop those muscles, those mental muscles, as it were. So it's great to be nurtured, but there is a little bit of a baby mentality, I feel like, and I was very naive coming into the elite world. However, my life off the track was where I had my, you know, I knew about adversity. I was, you know, that tough, thick-skinned, you know, girl, and that's how I dealt with a lot of the challenges I faced. However, there's also the downside of that is I was very vulnerable. And, you know, there's a lot of kind of, there's the vultures out there, they say, in athletics, and naive to a lot of stuff that I really, you know, needed protecting from. So that's why I'm so passionate now about that elite athlete journey and helping athletes prepare. And I learned so much from my time at UCF and, you know, the collegiate system and the NCAA. There's so much that, you know, I feel like we could learn so much for over here in Europe.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Thank you for sharing that. Paul, what about you? What was the first steps? You can't get much more remoter than where you were when you started off. So how was that for you?
Yeah, there was a big expectation from me. I mean, more so from the pressure that I put on myself. Like when I left North Queensland, I was the first in my family to ever do so. And you're getting these questions from your family as to what are you doing with your life? What career is running? What do you do when you run? they all expected that if you left school, you had to work, because they came from a remote area, like you said, where there was people who just worked very hard on cane fields and in the sugar mills, etc. So leaving the comfort of that lifestyle was very hard for myself. And when I went to the big city, I was one of those little kids in a big squad that Tonie was describing before, where I had to prove myself. I had to go out there and show them that I was worthy and deserving of being in that position in that squad. And just like the others, I was fortunate enough to have Olympians and Australian champions and many high caliber athletes in my squad that showed me the way. They didn't treat me very nicely in the beginning because I was the young dog. They were a little bit threatened, perhaps. But I had to prove my position. I had to go out there and work hard, and that's basically what I was able to do. But that was very hard to do, coming from where I came from to the big city where there's all these lights, there's all this glamour and glitz, you could say, and yeah, extremely hard. In 2 years or 3 years, I don't think that I improved my personal best time, because in order for me to go forwards, I had to go backwards a few steps. So it was very hard. The pressure that I put on myself was extraordinary. I felt that I had to prove something, not just to myself, but to my family, because that was one of those things that I had to prove to them that it was worth sending me to the big city.
Yeah, really interesting. Can I ask a question to all of you in relation to that? Was there any stage in those early days and weeks and months and years when you felt like quitting?
100%.
Anybody?
All the way to the end, you sometimes, you're just tired of the injuries. To wake up every morning sore and aching, or something's always injured. And just the mental anguish when all your friends are going out to parties and having fun, and you got to be in bed by a certain time. You got to get X amount of sleep. Oh yeah, you think about quitting a lot. You really do. But then you think about what it feels like to be the best in the world and being on top of those podiums. And you kind of, have your pity party and you wake back up.
There are many sacrifices that you must make as an athlete. It's unbelievable. Like you see like you said, you see your friends going out, they're partying. They're at the age where they're exposed to all the elements. Going out and drinking and of legal age, etc. And you just wish that sometimes you could actually have a little bit more of a social life and be like them. However, you have to say to yourself, okay, no, I've set myself something to do. I've got goals and dreams, and I'm going to make something of myself here.
Marilyn, any time you felt like walking away or running away?
Not in the beginning. Okay, so I had a Nigerian mum, so going out partying, all that stuff, you didn't do that anyway. So this was great. I had something to fill my time with. Also, you guys haven't done 800-meter sessions, so you need to be fresh. So again, I didn't mind about all that other stuff. No, to be honest, it was my saving grace. It was my way out. This was how I was going to provide for myself. This is how I was going to provide for my family. So, I kind of had that all or nothing mentality. And in the beginning, and that was the thing that gave me my confidence. It was what I was known for. So I was just relishing the challenge, and whatever it took, I didn't mind, Yeah. But it definitely came later on. Oh yeah, especially the soreness. It definitely came, the wanting to, what was this all for? And we're going to get into it. I've had 3 medals back in retrospect, all the scandals that come with elite sport, the doubts, the people questioning me, you get tired of that. There's only so much you can bat off as a human. So yeah, but the first 6 years of my career was bliss.
I think you can host the next show, because you just made a great segue into our next part of the conversation there. There's a lot that you can control in your world of preparing for your event and all the training and hard work that goes into it. But there's a lot that you don't control as well in the world of sport, and that is what the competition's doing and whether they're doing it fairly or not. We've had a pretty ripe run of it through world sport, not just in track and field, but a lot of sports that we've had cheats and we've had people taking shortcuts to try to get to the top. We've seen retrospective processes going on for many years now. How did you particularly feel? I'm interested to know from each of you how you felt about when you got on the start line. Was there any doubts in your mind that you were up against people that were taking shortcuts? And how did you deal with that mentally? Tonie, want to kick us off on this one?
Well, yeah, the answer is absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say I took it all the way to the starting line. I would reflect on it a lot of times pre-race, because there's nothing I can do going into the race, and then I would reflect again on it when I'm on the podium if I'm not on the highest stand. Because in my, I was part of the early generations of the drug, what do you call it? When they're trying to ban against it, they try to create protocols to try to ban against it. The unfortunate thing was that there was so much rampant drug use during my age. I mean, I had been approached multiple times by coaches and managers to, what are you taking? What are you doing? And then I would say, I'm not doing anything. I'm clean. And they're like, oh my God, just imagine how much better you would be if you were taking X, Y, and Z, and I can help you with that. I actually turned, I became a witness against a coach who was one of the first U.S. coaches to get a lifetime ban because he actually propositioned me in front of my teammate. And so I had a collaborating witness on that. But the hardest thing is to know that there are individuals that are willing to sacrifice their bodies, their careers, for that monetary gain, that temporary feeling that they're the best, knowing that they cheated. And some of them believe that they're doing it because everybody else is doing it, so they're thinking they are the ones that are even the playing field. But my whole point was I wanted to live a clean life, have a clean career, and one day be able to play with my kids, my grandkids, and not have aches and pains or have heart disease or liver disease, or just be around here. I'm now 60 years old, and I think I made the great choice.
Yeah, good man. Marilyn, what are your thoughts on it all?
I mean, it's, really similar. I was willing to do whatever it took to be the best me I could be, but not that, it was the whole thrill and the challenge was to see how far I could go, how far I could push myself. I mean, over here, we've got the situation with the Russians. So, that was a whole systemic doping scandal, and that definitely impacted me all the time. I think for me, I just pushed my bodies to levels that, at the time I was just thinking this is what it takes. This is how hard I have to go. But realizing that, I was never on that level playing field with those girls, and never would I be unless, I was willing to take drugs, which I wasn't. So people always ask me how I feel about getting these medals back. And it's an intrinsic kind of reassurance that I was always good enough, that, I stayed true to my integrity. I stayed true to, the ethics of clean sport and what the Olympics and sport is all about. So I have no regrets. I can empathize. I understand what pressure feels like. I understand what it feels like to have your federation impose things on you and you feel like you've got no choice. But essentially we do have a choice. And so, all I was ever able to control was what I did. And that was to step out on that line knowing that I was clean.
Yeah, great. Paul, other than sugar cane down there in Australia, was there any other vices that were offered to you to go a bit faster?
Yeah, there has been coaches and managers who have suggested drug use in the past. It's one of those things that I never was keen to take that path and jeopardize my body in that particular manner. It didn't feel right for me. I guess I grew up with a belief system and values that with a little bit more respect about my own body. In saying that, all of this, I have been the recipient of receiving a world championship medal due to drug use, not from myself, but from other athletes. In 2001 World Championships, we came fourth across the finish line in the 4x100 metre relay. And it wasn't until 6 years later in Melbourne where I received the bronze medal for the World Championships, because the United States had been disqualified due to one of their athletes testing positive to a banned substance. So I have been in a race where there has been athletes who have cheated, no doubt, and it was proven that the testing, I guess, is working. It's not foolproof, or it's not 100% at the moment, but I think they're making inroads in terms of the testing, and the athletes are becoming a little bit more aware that the risk is becoming higher for them to start taking drugs. In saying that, there are athletes who will always take the risk and jeopardise their body in the meantime.
Now, I've got three wise people on the show here today, so what would you say that to any young athlete, and we've got a lot of young athletes watching the show today, so what would you be saying to them in terms of when that temptation comes along? What do you say to them in terms of making sure they make the right choices?
Well, the one thing I want to say, I'll dovetail on what Marilyn was talking about. A lot of people don't understand, especially when they're coming into the sport or they're watching it as a spectator, that there are governmental pressures put upon athletes to cheat because they want to be the one. They want to have the country that's on top of the podium. They want to hear the national anthem. They look upon, the medal count as national pride. But then there's another reason why a lot of athletes cheat, and that's the monetary thing. Because a lot of these kids that come into the sport are following their heroes, or they're seeing the glamour life. Some of them realize they're not going to be that football player, that basketball player, that baseball player, whatever. And they go, track and field, hey, it's the Olympics, it's glamour. I see Usain Bolt, I see this person, that person, with these multi-million-dollar contracts. Why not me? And they don't realize that a lot of times the pressure of those individuals at the top to stay at the top, case in point, Marion Jones probably was one of these individuals, and there's a litany of names you can probably add to that. They were protecting their monetary gains. When you get to a point that you're making, and I know that the sport has changed a little bit in terms of now you guys race a little bit more for prize money. But back in the day, there was appearance fees and then prize money and then bonuses on top of that, when I was competing. And so if you're protecting, if you're getting to the point that you're number one ranked in the world and you're getting $25,000 American dollars per race just to show up, and there are rumors of Usain Bolt getting $80,000 to $100,000 per race just to show up, it's incentive to try to hold on to that spot. I'm not saying that he or anybody that I'm mentioning were drug cheats, but when you're in a decline or having a bad season, you're probably more apt to want to cheat just to hold on to that lifestyle that you've acquired for yourself. The lure of money is incredibly infectious. It really is. And you got your contracts, but the fact that you're going to these big meets, these races are designed for you anyway. They put in and take out who you don't want to run against or want to run against, and then you get a stack load of cash on top of it. Oh yeah, you cheat. A lot of people would cheat. Absolutely. So what do you tell kids? You tell them, hey, do it for the love of the sport, not for the potential gains that you get from the sport. That's what I tell my kids. That my athletes back up.
Do you think professional sport is too professional? And when I say that is, we're always talking about money, aren't we? We're talking about the marketing dollar. We're talking about the pressure coming from the federations and associations and governing bodies. Does something have to happen systemically with the actual structure of world sport to change this, or do you think it's always going to be the case like this?
Me personally, I don't think we're professional enough. I think we need to create an athletes union. I think they need to have more even pay scales across the board that everybody can make a living wage. I believe that there should be more transparency in the drug process and how it's adjudicated. I also think that there should be more science involved, so athletes can get, the best out of science all across the country. I mean, United States does a great job at it, but we're on the cutting edge, and we should be able to share this technology with everybody. I think we have a long way to go, and I think we just need more cooperation than isolation. Yeah,
good point. Marilyn, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I 100% second that. Track and field especially it's not professional enough. It's very elitist. And until we can level that out, we're just going to keep seeing the same old. And, it takes a lot. It's going to take a big sort of chunk of humble pie for the governing bodies to, almost listen from the bottom down, actually. Essentially, athlete welfare is so low in their priorities at the moment. But, we are the ones that are experiencing this and going through this, and we have a lot to share, and we can be very influential in that change. However, very few of us are at the table and able to make these decisions. So until that happens, we've got a lot of work to do.
Paul, what are your views?
Yeah, athletes aren't compensated for the time and effort that they put into this sport. There is approximately 1% of athletes at the very top who are being compensated very well. However, there's no incentive to continue in this sport if you're an up-and-coming athlete. In our country in particular, most of the money is at the hierarchy of administration within our governing bodies, and it trickles down then lastly to the athletes. So to try and motivate and inspire kids to continue athletics and stay in the sport of athletics is extremely challenging, particularly in this country. And that's the battle that I'm finding as a coach at the moment, to try and actually say to kids, well, you can actually do really good things in this sport, but they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see themselves at the elite because it's a very long way. And there's no recognition along the way. There's no rewards for the hard work that they put in. So it is extremely disappointing. I think that we need to definitely be more professional. The athletes need to be at the heart of it all, at the core of the business, because without athletes, there is no sport. And essentially, that's how we need to think about our sport, to take care of the athletes, to nurture that talent, and then share the love.
Fantastic. Tonie, you talked about a possible union that's required for athletes. Have you heard of the UW Global Union in Europe for athletes?
I have not.
They've got 85,000 members in the union of athletes in Europe. And my research tells me that most people in the track and field world don't know about this union and have never heard about what they're doing. But you might want to check it out and just see whether it's something that you might feel is applicable at a global level, because I'm quite interested in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will do that. I mean, I'm back. It seems like I'm in a loop of the movie Groundhog's Day. I get involved with the sport. I walk away from the sport, get involved on the legislative side, walk away from that because I get frustrated with all the BS. And I just got a call a couple of days ago for a position back at USA Track and Field in the Law and Legislation Department to get back involved. So I'll definitely, I'm here talking about things I truly believe in. I'll take that passion and put that platform, and I'll take it to our national level, because I like Paul's exactly right and Marilyn's right. We have to affect change from the top. We really do, because the top is getting all the money, and we have to make sure the athletes are getting living wages. What other professional sport has their athletes training and then have to leave to go get a job and make a living, after it? You don't see people from the Kansas City Chiefs training to, getting ready to play today and then tonight going to their night job. It's not going to happen. Track and field's got to get to a point that we have living wages from the very beginning elite athletes all the way to the top.
I think before you go and sign a contract for employment at the US Track and Field, have a chat to me. I think you might be interested in something we're doing at the moment that can add some value to that. Marilyn, you had something else to say about that, I could see.
I was just going to say, it's, if you're a track and field athlete, you have to prepare for 2 careers. And I wish someone had told me that at 10 years old, because I might have chosen differently. But I think, when I think back, that's what my mom was, really sort of strong about, me having my backup plan and making sure I had my education and that degree, whatever it was in, because she knew, not only as, a Nigerian mother in the UK, that I was going to have to work 10 times harder. The only thing she did say to me is, why did you pick tennis? But, that's a whole other ball game. But, it's true. Like, that's why transition is so hard, because you've dedicated 20 years to be, leaving no stone unturned in one career, one area that like the back of your hand, and then you're just told, okay, that's over now, or you're not prepared for it. And then you've got to, you're going to chase that, level of excellence in another career. It's really hard.
Yeah, look, we had a lighthearted, laugh about the fact that athletes have to go and do, track and field athletes need to go and do 2 jobs, but it's actually sad, and you're right. I think in terms of we really need to appreciate what the sport gives. I recently wrote an article about how the world needs athletes. It's a very important aspect of humanity, I believe, in terms of all the great attributes that the world of track and field and athletes in general brings to the world as a species, because there's so many positive, inspirational and motivating things that come out of the world of sport, and we need to make sure that everyone's looked after. Paul, you were going to say something.
An athlete has a life expectancy, unfortunately, and like we talked about, 20 years you commit to something. During that time you have to set yourself up for post career, and sometimes when you're doing your track and field career, you're not feeling like you're fulfilling your potential because you are committing to your studies and part-time jobs and works. So really, are you called an elite athlete? I mean, we say that we're elite athletes, but when you're not being compensated as such, it becomes very, very hard.
Yeah, very good point. Now, look, before the show today, I was talking to some of my friends, telling them I was going to have these wonderful track and field stars on the show today, and if they had any questions that they'd like me to ask you. So this one is coming from Alan, actually, who's a friend of mine. And Alan says, what's the panel's view on the latest shoe technology that seems to be sweeping the world of not only track and field, but also the road running scene? And we've seen in 2020 a number of world records being absolutely crushed because of, well, perhaps because of this new shoe technology. What are your views about what the shoe technology is doing, and is it a level playing field again in the world of track and field and road running at the moment? Paul, you kick us off on this one.
I guess it's very similar to the drugs and sport issue, because if there's one person in the field who's using advancements in technology to gain an advantage, I guess it can be deemed as cheating. However, I am an advocate for science in track and field. I believe that it's a good thing. We're allowing our athletes to improve themselves beyond performances of the past. And it can go either way. I mean, it depends on whether the shoe technology is proven, I guess, to be performance enhancing, because there's some people who believe that it's just a shoe and how much can it really do. However, there is other people on the flip side saying that, that person won because of the shoes that they're wearing. I had coaches in the past say to me, it doesn't matter what shoe you're wearing, it's the athlete who has to wear them. And that's where the real work is shown. So I'm not sure what the other guys think about that issue. Tonie?
Well, I think people forget that, when you get to the starting line, a lot of times every athlete is pretty equal, whether we're talking about in the 110-meter hurdle sprint, maybe there might be a difference of, 3 or 4 100ths of a second in everybody's PR. So everybody's always looking for an advantage. This particular shoe controversy doesn't go back a couple of years. It goes back decades. If you can remember back in the early, 70s, they had the Puma brush spike.
Yep.
That were used, and records were broken and they were banned. In 1988, 1987, 86, FloJo broke the world record with the Adidas accelerators. I was always on the cutting edge. I was fortunate enough to have great shoe contracts. And in fact, my shoe contract with Diadora allowed me to design my own footwear. And I designed spikes. One of my spikes is sitting over there in the corner there. But, I designed my own shoes. And I designed things that help me personally accelerate or excel in my event. And one of the things was a simple arch support. I had a little bit more stability for a hurdler coming down. You really can't collapse. And so I built in different things that are commonplace now. And so was that cheating? I don't know. It was just me personally. I was using technology to get my best out of myself and get the better of my competitors.
Yeah. Marilyn, what's your take on this?
Listen, I'm all for evolution and innovation, and that's a lot of what we're hearing. Look, I wish I had those shoes. I might not retire. Like the 800, anything that's going to help with lactic acid. But I think what I will sort of lend towards is, Tonie mentioned the sponsorship. There's so few athletes that have a contract. It's ridiculous, and if we're going to have these shoes, let's make it accessible to all. So maybe not everyone's to be sponsored, but they need to not cost £200 because that's like half my month's rent. So it's about equality. But hey, we all, when I'm training, I'm trying to have the best supplements, I'm trying to eat the best food, and it's just about kind of survival of the fittest there. But in terms of the bigger question here is looking at sponsorships and whether athletes are actually able to be professional athletes and solely seek all these gains that they can by fully just dedicating their lives in training. And the reality is there's so many can't.
There seems to be a theme that we're talking about today because, Tonie, I think you raised it. You were fortunate enough to be in that upper echelon where you got access to those types of opportunities, and a lot of people don't, right? So I think we're seeing throughout the show today this conversation about the ones that are at the top have access to these things that maybe make life a little bit easier. I'm not saying it does, but I'm just saying maybe it does. But it also comes down to the individual's aptitude and application of desire and all those other things. I appreciate it, but I think there's a lot of young people out there that go, God, I'd love to smash 2 seconds off my PB if I had a pair of fast shoes, right? And even if it's a psychological benefit that it gives me, I'd like to at least have the opportunity to be able to access that. Paul, you've got a thought?
Yeah, definitely. Accessibility is a big thing, and what Marilyn said before, it just struck a chord with me because all athletes need to have an equal opportunity to access the same equipment, and it costs a fortune. It really does. And we go back to, we call ourselves elite athletes, but are we really elite when we need to actually work jobs and pay for our own spikes? So it's so frustrating. It really is. It's a frustrating situation in our sport at the moment. We talk about inclusivity and being equitable towards all athletes. It really isn't. It really isn't. Unless you're at the top echelon and you're at the elite of our particular sport, you are being benefited in particular ways financially and with contracts, etc. And it's not trickling down to the athletes who want to do this for a living.
My argument on it all as an Olympic spectator, I'd like to just put forward that I think there's a lot of fair trade organisations around the world that could make some very good running shoes at a very affordable price that could be distributed amongst hundreds of millions of athletes across the world. And we shouldn't be just going to those regular big brands that get associations and partnerships with the IOC and other bodies around the world that look after each other all the time. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, to disrupt the supply chains of things like the sporting equipment across the world. And stay tuned, you're going to hear more on that one. So I've got some ideas around that. Let's talk about the Olympic Games because it's a hot topic and we're all looking at our computers every day. Is it on? Is it off? Is it on? Is it off? What's happening, folks? Is Tokyo going to happen this year? What do you think, Tonie? If we were to be having this conversation 3 months ago, I'd say 90% chance we're definitely having. But unfortunately, the news coming out of Tokyo has all been kind of negative. There are vaccines now. Yes, there's a decline in rates right now. Let's see what happens after this weekend with Super Bowl parties. But the problem is, it's the Olympics are always tend to be a popularity thing. And now, if the community, the townspeople of Japan, the country of Japan wants it, it's going to be there. But unfortunately, the latest reports are 80% of those individuals are not in favor of it because they're concerned of it becoming a super duper spreader, in their country. And they've already gone through one heck of a surge that they lost quite a few individuals. So I think if it happens, it's not going to be like any Olympics we've ever seen before. It might be an Olympics without fans. It might be an Olympic that doesn't even allow personal coaches there. We might have races that have open lanes, or every other lane. And we're going to probably have countries that just decide not to go because putting athletes again in an athletic village, you're asking them to bubble, but then they're coming together with other countries that don't have the same testing protocol, or they might be coming from countries that are having surges,
and you're really putting athletes at risk. So I don't think athletes are going to be vaccinated before they go to the Olympics. So I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm down to like 50% if it's going to happen.
Okay. Paul, what's your view on this one?
As a coach, I really do hope that it happens, because we've invested so much time and effort into preparing for the games. And from an athlete's perspective, you really do wish that it happens, because this is your livelihood. This is what you aspire to and what you dream of since you're a kid. On the flip side, there is a big issue. This pandemic is serious, and to bring 8,000 athletes into a country altogether is running a very big risk of and spreading this disease even further. So the fact that personal coaches can't be there, fans, modified agendas, fly in and fly out, it's going to look very different to Olympics in the past. And just to say that you're an Olympian, it's a very hard concept to really get your head around. I swing from different ways of it's on, it's off. You read different articles. There's a little bit of fake news at the moment. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. I really do hope it does for athletics and for sport in the world. But yeah, it's not looking likely the way the world is happening.
Yeah. Okay, Marilyn, what are your thoughts? Should it be on? Should it be off? Are we thinking about the athletes, or are we just thinking about money for the IOC? What's going on here?
How much do you want for my thoughts? This is a bittersweet subject. Tokyo was going to be my swan song, my bowing out, my third Olympics, and all up until September of 2020, I was training, I was working, I was doing everything I could. So I feel for those athletes. I know exactly, and for them, I hope it goes ahead. Me personally, I had to ask myself, what kind of games was this going to be for me? And I can't help but think of 2012. I can't help but think of Beijing, and it's not going to be anything like that. So for me, I had to find the piece that, it's probably not going to happen for me. And then this entire pandemic, I've been working as a key worker. I work for a charity, and we support the homeless community out here and people in crisis. So it is very real, and I've seen it from a whole different side. And, for the safety of the athletes and the people in Japan, it's a huge risk. So I just hope that they come up with the best solution for everyone. But as it stands, I don't see it going ahead. But we have to think of the bigger universal picture here.
Tonie.
Hey, Mark, the one thing that I think is a tell is the silence that's coming from the IOC. They're not saying anything. Here we are in February. We should at least say, if we're going forward, we should know the protocols, the quarantine protocols of the athletes. If there's going to be one, we should know a lot more about what's happening. We're only, half a year, 5 months away from needing to make these teams and get ready for travel. And we're not hearing anything. So I think more than anything, that's the tale of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I hope not, because I have 2 Olympic athletes that should make the team, and I'm hoping to be there with them, but I'm a little nervous. I really am.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's watch this space, isn't it? And just see what unfolds in the coming weeks and months. Our last topic for today, I'm really interested to get your view on this one, because we've had, if the world doesn't know, there's a change of president in the United States, and he's brought about a lot of change already, with executive orders coming out of that White House faster than Usain Bolt can run 100 meters, I think. And one of those executive orders has been having a huge impact on the world of track and field around the world, and that's the transgender issue. And we've now seen an executive order that's been put out to say that transgenders can participate in women's events in sport. And I've been reading a lot online with a lot of athletes' views about this around the world, and I'm really interested to hear each of your views on this and where it's heading us. What pathway is this taking us down? Marilyn, let's kick off with you.
So obviously it's something that's been quite topical in my career. I'm not afraid to speak my opinion. I think we have to be very, careful with how much we are impacting the legacy of women's sport. and the impact that implications that's going to have. You know, with me, one of the things I prided myself on was I could run as fast as the guys, I can beat the guys, and we have to think about science. You know, what does that mean? You know, I understand what they identify as, but sport is traditionally as divided into the genders. So we're thinking of your testosterone levels, and with track and field and running, okay, it's relatively safe, but think about combat sports. And how it impacts, the nature and the safety of all participants. So it's really tricky, because I'm all for equality and inclusion, but also I'm trying to safeguard the legacy of women's sport.
Okay, Tonie, what's your views on this one?
Well, mine's a little bit of a different take. I mean, the former president, went one way with banning everything, and the new president has opened up everything. But I think neither one of them took the time to really sit down and create a scientific panel to go, what is the true implication? Just like Marilyn said, we do have to protect the legacy of women's sport. But most people are just focusing on the transgender male to female and not the female to male. But then also, more importantly, you also have to look at that transition, that transition period of an athlete just beginning the transition period on those finishing, because they're wildly different athletes at that point, and those considerations have to be taken into effect. Obviously, if it's a male transitioning to female and he's just beginning, he's reaped all the benefits of that male genome and that male body, and definitely it's not a fair playing field to go against females who are biologically at a disadvantage in terms of natural hormones that build muscle and stamina, so on and so forth. But then when you're talking about an athlete that has completed the transition through hormone therapy and everything, it's more of a playing field. What I think possibly will end up happening, you will have a third category, or possibly a fourth, transgendered males and transgendered females. Possibly that's the thing. I'm not going to go down that slippery slope and get into the argument of the XXY chromosomes and those individuals, or the hermaphrodite, that argument. That's another whole slippery slope. But I definitely think if we're talking about the transgender thing, we definitely have to put together a scientific panel, and seeing what are the true advantages, disadvantages, how long does it take, are there some precautions that we need to take, or some stipulations saying if you are going to compete, you must be in transition for X many months before you compete against the other gender.
Okay, thank you, Tonie. Paul, what are your thoughts?
I read an article the other day about this issue, and the quote was at the heading, "The End of Female Sport." And that's a big statement to make, I guess. But in regards to the transgender issue, I guess it does relate to whether a male is transitioning to a female or vice versa, and how that relates to sport in general. Because we do know that males have naturally more strength and power, etc., due to the higher levels of testosterone. Now, it may come to a situation where we do have a different category. I'm totally in agreement with Tonie. I think that one day that might look something like that. We do have categories for athletes with disability, different classifications. So that's perhaps a way in which we can actually make this issue a little fairer on society, because you are competing against people who are in a similar situation to you. Sex is definitely different to gender, and vice versa.
Yeah, thanks for your views. I've got to say, Tonie, I like your approach in terms of taking the scientific look at this. My only concern is, and this is also something that's come up in the show today in relation to the conversation about drugs in sport, we've got to make sure that we move these agendas through the system a lot faster so we have results, because people's careers are being impacted every day that this takes time to sort out, right? And you've got people who are now getting gold medals and silver medals from 20 years ago, right? And there's something that's a legacy in world sport, is that it just takes too long for the bodies and the people associated, the stakeholders who are associated with these things, to get decisions made so that people's careers are not diverted or even avoided. Like some people will walk off the track at the moment thinking I'm not going to compete, and that's not right either. I think we need to find solutions that are scientific based, that are quick to be able to implement and make a standard so all people know where they stand on this. That's my view on it. Yeah. Okay. So before we wrap up today, as I said earlier in the show, we've got a lot of young athletes watching the show, and I'm really humbled to have the three of you on as guests today, because you've all contributed fantastically to the show, but also to the world of track and field. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of our guests for the contribution that you have each individually made and are still making, because you're giving back and making a difference as well in other people's lives. But I'd like to finish up today by asking you to share with the audience just a few words of inspiration for those people that are starting out on their professional sports journey. It doesn't necessarily need to be track and field. They might be taking up lacrosse, or they might be taking up basketball or baseball. How about you give them a few words of advice to help them on their way? Let's start with you, Tonie.
Well, the one thing I like to say to all those individuals out there, hey, thanks for tuning in and listening to an old guy like me, imparts my old wisdom. But the most important thing, one thing I do tell my athletes that I coach, I'm like, look, not everybody's going to become an Olympian, but you all are going to have an Olympic journey. And that journey might end in a gold medal, or just might end in a personal record, or an opportunity to be able to tell your grandkids that you ran track and it was one of the most amazing times of your life. You know, the thing about track and field and thing about being a great athlete is that you learn discipline, dedication, sportsmanship, and you just have a great time and create great friends that last the rest of your lifetime. It's a great sport. It's a great feeling to be in shape. And you want to just keep up with it and stay forward. You know, your goal, your gold medal might be the best on your street, but you know what? It's still a gold medal.
Brilliantly said. Marilyn, what are your last words of inspiration?
I'm just being, inspired there. Thank you. You know what? Sport has the power to change the world, and I always say my life will never be measured just by the medals that I've won alone. My first piece of advice would be champion yourself, celebrate yourself, recognize what your gifts and your talents are, recognize what you're passionate about, because if it is something that you want to pursue, you're going to be doing a lot of it. So you've got to love it. Even on the days you hate it, you've got to remind yourself why you're doing it. And it is that passion it'll be rooted in. And, dream big, dream as big as you like, be ambitious. I did, a 10-year-old girl from Stonebridge, Northwest London, coming to the Olympics. It was unheard of, but I did it. A lot of hard work, a lot of discipline, focus. And so then, it all boils down to what I call champion mindset. And whether you're an athlete, sporty or not, everyone can have that champion mindset. And it's simply being willing to do whatever it takes to achieve your dream and your goal. And lastly, just don't give up on you. Unless you say so. Unless it's time to retire.
Yeah.
No, never give up.
Brilliantly put. Paul, you don't have much hard work to follow after those two, do you? Eh?
Look, sport has given me lessons in life that you just can't get in a textbook at school. Sport has been an avenue for me to expand as a person, to become someone, to make great friendships, and to be fit and healthy. My father once said to me, he said, if you're fit and you're healthy, you're rich. And that's what sport has given me. It's given me that feeling of being rich, not necessarily in a monetary term, but definitely in a longevity term and also a legacy. I feel that sport has really given me many, many things, an opportunity to travel, social connections, an opportunity to speak with you nice folk this afternoon. So I cherish the moments that I had in life, and I like to tell my athletes and aspiring athletes that sport can give you the best feelings of self-satisfaction ever. Don't lose sight of your dreams and goals, because you too one day can achieve great things.
Yeah, beautifully put. Beautifully put, the three of you on that note. Now, if you're watching and listening to the show today, get onto YouTube, check these three people out, look at their races over the years and how wonderful they all looked. Tonie was even wearing a suit at one stage with a little helmet head on, so that was fantastic to watch. Yeah, exactly. So listen, it's been absolutely wonderful having the three of you on the Global Sports Channel today. Marilyn, Tonie and Paul, you've been wonderful guests. And look, I tell you what, we're going to have to get you back at some other time because we've got lots more that we can talk about, I'm sure. But for today's effort, thank you very much for being part of the show.
Thank you so much, guys. Pleasure.
It's been great.
There we go, folks. Marilyn Okoro, Paul DeBella and Tonie Campbell joining me today on Athlete's Confession on the Global Sports Channel. That's our first show in this series. If you've liked it, let us know. Give us a thumbs up or a like or a comment or whatever you feel like giving us. Tell us some of the topics you'd like to hear on the next show, and we'll make sure we cover it for you here on the Global Sports Channel. Now, if you're not a subscriber to our channel, please do so. Hit the little bell button. You'll be notified next time we drop a video, and go and check us out on social media as well. Yes, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and you can connect with us and keep up to date with all the good things that are going on here at the Global Sports Channel. If you haven't checked out any of Tasha Danvers' interviews, shame on you. Get on over to our website, globalsportschannel.com, and check them out. Tasha's had some brilliant people on the show. And it's not going to be too long before I'm back with another edition of this particular show. Until then, my name's Mark Philpott. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.